Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to Tuesday at 2 with your hosts Dave and Selima.
This is a down-to-earth discussion channel to solve your dilemmas about starting an online business. We know that there's a lot of worry out there because of the lack of clear information, together with false promises and a considerable amount of scamming. So this channel is to help you find your way through, and we're going to start this week with the discussion of a very popular topic that we've come across and experienced ourselves, the question of overwhelm when you want to start an online business. Dave, I came across an article a couple of months ago written by a fairly well-known internet guru who said there's no such thing as overwhelm. What do you have to say to that, my friend?
Well, first of all, don't we love our internet gurus? Well, I disagree. I think anything that you are embarking on that's completely new to you is going to have a degree of overwhelm. I've certainly found that with many things during my life. Learning how to do music, which we were talking about before we went on air, is a good example of that. Building an online business when you've never done anything like it before certainly has plenty of opportunity for overwhelm, but it's not something that should put you off. It's a natural thing, and hopefully during the course of today's broadcast, we can give some hints and some perspective on how to deal with that.
It's an interesting thing. I actually looked up the the definition of overwhelm, see what the internet had to say about that, as if we don't know what overwhelm is. And it said to be buried or drowned beneath a huge mass of something, especially water, and I put in brackets here, or an online business training.
Very good.
To the point where you lack efficacy and feel frozen and paralyzed. Now, I think the hardest thing for people who are interested in the way we're approaching this from a mature point of view, and those people who've had success in their previous careers, is that when you approach starting an online business, you feel confident. You're probably wondering what it is. But if you have obtained skills in your previous career and you know how to do something, you approach it in the same way. I'm sure I can crack this. Yeah. I'm sure I can do it. But the problem is the way that you have to learn how to start this business is not the same way as it is when you were training in a career, or when you're actually meeting people face to face.
Yeah, that's true.
And there's this question of self-doubt that comes in as the stress levels increase. Stress in the sense that you can't seem to find the answer for something. And as you said before we came on air, it's actually a simple process. But the problem is each part of that process then mushrooms into this enormous industry of trying to assist you. Say, for example, start a website. You will go right across the internet to find out how to do it. And 50,000 different opinions about how to where to buy your first domain, and to go for .com, .uk, .net, .org.
So don't do this, do this, don't do this, do
and
this.
That's where the overwhelm starts to come in, because you don't get a clear answer for something. And it's not as if you can go up to a colleague in the office and say, by the way, do you know how to do this?
No, that's very true. And the chances are, if you're doing this, you're doing it alone, as you say, or possibly if you're lucky with through. I mean, I found networking to be quite useful, as I did in the offline world. You can do networking on Skype and on various groups and so on, and form a little kind of team of people to help each other out that you can bounce ideas of, and that's quite a useful thing I've found. But generally speaking, as you touched on, the way to do things is to decide. Pen and paper is always good. Write down the list of things that you need to achieve. Okay, it's a pretty simple process. I made some brief notes earlier. You need a website. I mean, it's a business, and instead of say a retail store, your shop window to the world is your website. So if that's your starting point, then don't worry about social media or internet marketing or any of the other stuff. You need a website and you need some products to sell on that website. If you have them, that's fine. But as we discussed in last week's broadcast, there are various different models that you can find products if you don't know them yourself.
Yes.
But that's the first thing you need. And so your decisions from that should be, am I going to build a website myself, or am I going to pay someone else to do it? And oftentimes it might be expedient and sensible to get someone else to do it, to pay for, to build you a basic website and tell them what you need. I find, though, a much better learning curve to try and do it yourself, at the very least, because it's become a very simple process building a website compared to what it was even 10 years ago.
Indeed.
You probably can do it. And even if you want to pay someone else to do it, you kind of need to give them an idea of what you want it to do. And if you don't necessarily know that until you begin the process.
Yes,
so,
I agree.
It's a baby steps kind of situation, as with all elements of this. You just break it down into what you need to start with, and then start with that, and then just ask yourself
really like
questions
building Lego. It really is fundamental steps. And I think also understanding what the process is. If you do farm it out to a website developer, the difficulty with that is that he will, because he's an expert, he will put things in that you absolutely don't understand.
Yeah. Or need.
He's got this little gizmo or little widget that's completely ruining or screwing up everything you're doing because you can't type or you don't know. So you have to wait for an email back from him. Yeah. And invariably he's on another project, and website designers close down when they're on product. They don't talk to any previous customer. You might have to wait 2 weeks.
Yeah, exactly. And you may not also have access to it yourself.
Exactly. That used to be the content management system, the CMS.
Yeah, there comes to a point where website designers hand over ownership to you. But initially they don't, because they want to be working on it or responding to what you tell them you want. And as you say, that all takes time. Whereas building it yourself, you can kind of go in there and, as you're learning what you need and what you want to do with the site, you can gradually, on a step-by-step basis, add those things in yourself.
It's actually much, much easier, as we've just said, because you can buy the domain, and then you can just, a lot of the domains offer WordPress download straight away, which is it's free, and then you can build from there. And it's an amazing way to do it. And actually, if you're not under time pressure, it's fun, because you're actually learning how to build your own presence.
I must admit that could also lead to overwhelm.
Indeed, yeah.
For a variety of reasons. When I first built websites, I found it was just so kind of satisfying and so much simpler than I thought it would be. Because I'm not a mathematical sort of person in any way. I'm quite technical, but only when it comes to knobs and faders and that sort of thing. I'm not technical in a mathematical kind of way. But actually, you don't need to be to build websites. And I discovered that it pretty much is a kind of drag and drop scenario where you're just pulling elements, and it's pretty simple stuff if you get the right kind of builder. But then I just went on to make 4 or 5 websites, and then I realized, affiliate websites, and then I realized I've now got 4 different businesses to look after that I've just created. So I very quickly narrowed it down and just concentrated on one at a time.
What about the idea, Dave, of bringing perfection into your...
Well, I mean, we're
perfection.
We're entrepreneurs. It's kind of the curse of the entrepreneur, isn't it, to be always seeking perfection? And it takes a long time for you to realize that there's no such thing.
There's no such thing.
And it's you're never going to attain it, and it doesn't really matter. I've found this. I mean, we'll move on to internet marketing in later broadcasts, but to touch briefly on one aspect of that, which is video, which I started doing some years ago. I'd worked in the audiovisual industry, so I had seen professional cameramen, professional presenters, professional editors doing their stuff, and I'd kind of dabbled in it back in the day, but I never really saw myself doing that. But that is actually what I've done to market
Mm.
everything I've made money out of online. And it's
Mm.
basically just been me in front of a camera,
Mm.
busking and watching myself back and showing it to other people and
Yes.
them saying, "We'll stop saying and ah," for example. And
Mm.
it's far from perfect. And I've found that people aren't actually looking for perfection online
They're not.
anywhere anymore. They're looking for
Authenticity.
relatability, authenticity, someone that they can know, like, and trust, basically.
Yes.
And that tends not to be what they get from the great big corporates that are out there with the massive budgets and the slick £1 million videos, that sort of thing. So that's one idea of perfection that is a bit of a myth, I would say.
Mm. Mm. It's a very nuanced area. Yeah, because if it's too, I remember seeing a training session once where one of the students had put together, well, it was like a recording studio, and he'd obviously learnt all the tricks of the trade and camera angles from different positions and things, and it was very slick but totally inauthentic, and everybody said, not today, not today.
Yeah. I mean, I've made that mistake myself. I mean, I've got a green screen, a green wall in here and everything. I've done some quite elaborate videos, but they haven't been the most successful. The most successful ones for me have been sort of in here in my living room, or just actually out walking around talking about something, and then maybe dropping some other parts into it. But without getting too specific on video, they're far from slick, put it that way.
Yes, but those are the ones that seem to resonate correctly with people who are looking for something, and also my problem when I was starting up was my because I'm visual and artistic, I had to have the exact right image and the exact right font and and I would spend weeks and weeks, and the months would go by because I wasn't happy with it. And ultimately, of course, I never thought that people have different machines. They might be looking at it on their PC, on their MacBooks. And I had no idea that the color would be different on a different screen. So all those months were wasted because I was choosing the right color red or something.
Yeah.
They're all, I mean, talk about a learning curve. And then having to send something out that really wasn't me, but I couldn't spend any more time on it because it was absurd.
Yeah, that's definitely
so
true. That's
perfection has a different meaning.
Yeah, the striving for perfection. Perfection, you can end up being, completely losing the plot. To put it blankly. So yeah, it's an aspect of overwhelm.
It is.
Do you think it can also, the process of overwhelm, it can lead to self-doubt, I think, as well?
Yes. I do think
that. You've possibly convinced yourself that you should be able to do everything yourself.
Yes.
And you have this massive list of things that you think you need to be doing, and you're going to do them all yourself.
I think
it's common it's not just an online thing, but it's
I think it leads to self-doubt because as we've just said, every single stepping stone has this huge bubble around it with everybody throwing in their penny's worth, and an endless array of experts telling you what to do, and you don't have the knowledge to dissect what is valuable and what isn't, or what is hitting the spot or what isn't. And you've got so many of those going around that you actually lose the plot. You forget what you're doing or why you're doing it. In fact, I've been in the early stages, I used to actually forget what I was trying to do. I was so busy trying to learn what an avatar means or what a vertical means. For me, somebody said, I said, oh, you mean market sector? Oh, thank you for that. Vertical is because it's a graph. So it's new lingo.
Exactly, yeah, there's jargon as well.
There's jargon, we talked about that before. But the constituent parts of starting a business, and you and I've made some notes here, the websites, the funnels, the graphics, to quote your own words, have created bewildering industries around them.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously they are all competing for your business.
Yes, you never know if they're telling you the truth or whether you can use the information.
Yeah, exactly. And that's yeah.
I would also say something else. When you're in that space where you are feeling overwhelmed because you're attempting to create this business of yours, for some reason, because it's computerized, because it's digital and it's so fast, I physically have to get up and walk away from my desk. I can't just take 5 or breathe deeply. I have a burst of energy where I have to walk away. But you can't go and discuss it with anybody in that moment. And
that's true.
the funny thing is, it somehow has a hold on you. You come back, you walk around, I know what that is, and you come back. And you'll come back at 9 o'clock at night, or even 10, or perhaps 11, 3 o'clock in the morning. You think, actually, and then you've realized that it's a drug.
Yeah, and it takes the brain a bit of time to process.
It does.
Things, as you've said, and sometimes that is the best thing to do, is to sort of walk away. I've never been a huge believer in the to-do list thing, for example, because, well, it's a good thing to do, but don't make it too ambitious for that reason, because you're probably going to need a little bit of time in between each task to, assess what you've done and then what you need to do the next time. Sometimes it takes a bit of time for you to process whatever the number 2 was before you go into number 3.
And I would also say that if you do to-do lists, very often they're not. You find that you haven't actually followed them, because when you're at number 1, you're going to be taken somewhere, which is possibly very interesting, which is going to help you further down the list, but you don't realize that until you've listened to it. So you've filled yourself with a whole lot of information, which is valuable maybe when you come to market your product.
Yeah.
But you're still building your website, so everything gets muddled up.
Yeah, that's true.
So to-do lists for me, it's not sequential. It's not really.
I remember thinking a long time ago, before I even got involved in online stuff, how useful it would be to just have like a floppy disk, if anyone remembers those, drive in the back of your head, so that you could just slot the information when you actually need it, rather than it just fermenting in there with everything else.
Exactly.
You don't really need it yet, but
Exactly.
I'll need that next month. I can just pop the disk in. Unfortunately, we don't have that.
Yeah. Yes.
As yet, but yeah. So what are the methods then that, or tactics or strategies that you've used yourself to get past overwhelm, to help you through?
I get up regularly from my desk and I walk around. Something else I want to mention as well: when you're deeply involved with something you're doing online, your blood sugar level will drop. And I was told many years ago by an optometrist, I think, that when the eyes are moving very fast, it affects your blood sugar level. Okay. So you can start to feel dizzy or slightly weak, and you don't realize why. And it's because you're concentrating so much and on the movement of the things on the screen, which is why obviously you don't eat unhealthy things, but certainly fruit, or get up and I'll drink water. And I do today. I certainly didn't 10 years ago, but I do today keep business hours.
Yeah, I think that's really important. 5. Yeah, I think that's incredibly important. Yeah, and part of that is to put a price on your time. And this is maybe slightly diverging, but have a pretty good idea of what your hours are worth. Because I see this well, to give you an example, my partner runs her own driving instruction business, and she only works part-time, where she's actually out doing instruction. She works 3 days a week, and that leaves her a lot of free time, and she does very well at that. She doesn't have a franchise to pay. She owns the car. It's a pretty good business, but she's constantly rearranging her diary and responding to people that send her messages to rearrange something at all times of the day and night, because the customers don't have any concern over your business hours. And in that type of business, she kind of has to respond almost as soon as she gets the message, because she may have to juggle 5 or 6 other lessons around, just as an example. But one of the luxuries of this kind of business is that you completely dictate your own hours.
Yeah.
And it's important. That's I think, as we discussed before in the pros and cons in our first broadcast, that's a good and bad thing, because you could end up working all hours, or you could end up not working at all. It's something you just have to make a balance. So I think you're right. It's important to have set hours so that you can walk away from things. But it's also, you also have to reserve the right to work until 1 a.m. if you're on fire. You know, if
you're on fire, you won't sleep afterwards. But
yeah, of course. But if you've solved something, if you've solved something, if you've overcome something you've been overwhelmed by, and something's clicked, it's certainly not uncommon to just work through it and get that done.
No, feels good.
Reward yourself. You know, one of the key things is to reward yourself.
Yeah.
Also,
yeah. So, well, invariably, if in the days that, I mean, it can still happen, but unlikely. I'll take the following morning off. I'll go to it when I'm ready. I mean, I think the body starts to tell you that. There are times like, actually, I don't want to do that this morning. I'm going to go and do something else. So you can wait. Yeah, I'll do it when I get back. But then, of course, as we had a situation the other day when you were doing something for this channel, and I thanked you for it. You worked late because I needed your expertise on that. Something I want to mention too, which is my beef, and I know you agree with me, is so much of the so-called training in this genre in starting an online business. I'm sorry to say it's badly explained. They can't communicate properly. Yeah, and I think that is part of the problem. A lot of the so-called trainers aren't teachers. They haven't learnt how to explain something properly in clear language.
Yeah, and how to stay on topic.
How to stay on topic, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
My God, I can tell you how many symposiums did I go on where the person went off on his quad bike on some ridiculous topic and was asked to stay on topic and said, no, I don't want to. Yeah, forgetting that people had paid and I'd actually flown in from another country to attend.
This is it, yeah. I mean, this is forgivable on something like, okay, just to be completely random, Billy Connolly, the great Scottish comedian, one of the things he did was to go off. He would start a topic and then he would disappear somewhere else, and there'd be a lot of jokes in between, but he would always circle back. Yes. Sorry to use that horrible phrase, but he would come back to that thing. You go, yeah, I wondered where he was going with that. But that was entertaining, and you know, it was part of the whole act, and he did it in a very timely kind of way. Very. But a lot of the online, and we've both experienced, let's face it, some of the same trainers online, and they seem to feel that these journeys that they go off, or these tangents that they go off on, they can sometimes take hours. No. And that is not what people are paying there for.
No, you know? And I feel it's very strongly about that. My life is much more interesting than theirs, so why do I have to listen to it? I'm paying to learn how to start a business. Huh?
But it doesn't help if you're feeling overwhelmed and you go into a webinar or a training session to help clarify something. If that doesn't happen and you've possibly gone off on other tangents over several hours, it's, I think, unforgivable.
It increases to the point you think, I can't do this because I can't find the training, or I can't find somebody to answer me a simple question. Yeah,
and you're paying
thousands, thousands, and then there's no complaints procedure, or you get the super nice waffle that comes back. We thank you for your time and all this crap. Well, I had a situation recently where I wanted to know something, quite a simple question. If I don't do this, will I still have access to this particular program? If I don't pay that fee, can I still access that? My God, round and round and round and round. 4 different people with all the fake pleasantries. And then I was sent back to my first question. It wasn't answered. Yeah. And I wrote and I said, you specialize in wasting people's time.
Yeah, sadly, it seems to be a kind of symptom of of online business training. I've never quite understood. I think actually I do understand. It's because this whole online thing is still fairly new, and unfortunately, most of us were introduced to it through the kind of get rich quick, the initial .com boom and bust thing, where people did make millions seemingly overnight using this new thing called the internet, and you know those days are long gone. But that kind of legacy has continued, so it's attracted a whole load of people that you know are looking for, I don't know, something other than, they're certainly not really looking for a business. You know, they're looking.
Do you know,
they're looking for
some of them are looking to be teachers. Some of them are people who are who. I know one who actually wanted to be a university professor. So we never actually learnt anything much. We just listened to him trying to be a university professor. There is an art to teaching. There is it's an ability to make things easy to understand. Clarity. And that is the point, certainly, where people for whom this channel is being conducted, or what we're doing for people over 50, we want to be taught in language that explains, that makes life and things clear.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the whole point of today talking about overwhelm is not to, is just to make you aware that it's a thing, but it's also a thing that you will have experienced and overcome in different parts of your life. It's not something that should put you off the idea of creating an online business, by no means, but it's there in the creation of an online business more than I think in many things.
Absolutely,
and
absolutely, because it's an unknown quantity. It's an unknown quantity, and you don't know why necessarily that you're feeling overwhelmed. It tends to build up. I'm doing this because it's a sideways movement. It's not a linear one. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I can't tell you how many of my customers have said they're going through overwhelm. Can't tell you. All say it. Overwhelmed and confused.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's understandable. I mean, we've been there. I've certainly
But it's completely normal. That's the most important thing to say. The reaction is normal.
Part of the process.
And I think it's particularly difficult if you haven't had that feeling before in a business environment where you've always known what you were doing because you were trained to do it. It's a different type of learning, isn't it? It's
it absolutely is.
It's totally different.
Yeah, and possibly that's where we should be moving in future broadcasts. I think it was pretty important for these first few to just talk about the basics of an online business and definitely to discuss overwhelm. Maybe.
And I also would say, you know, we were talking about what we can do to mitigate that, to alleviate that. And obviously, it's to take things in small chunks, very small chunks, and to do the easy stuff first. So you get a feeling that you're achieving something, and then okay, I've got to approach Google Tag Manager tomorrow or next week, and Google Tag Manager was the one thing that I absolutely couldn't get right. I didn't understand it, and then I passed it over. I'm going to do that. I'll ask somebody else to do it. It is difficult, but yes, and you make sure that you time something. If you're 15, 20 minutes or an hour doing something, then you get up and say, I've done that now. I'm going to go. Yeah, I'll approach that again tomorrow. Or
I think it's the old adage. I mean, what's the what's the phrase? Don't try and eat the elephant in one bite.
No.
Old chestnut from way back. But I think that is the idea. Is you just decide what your task is going to be for the day, say, and you break that into how you're going to achieve that. You know, what steps you need to take, and as many steps as it needs to be.
Yes, because you don't know how many steps it's going to be.
Yeah, it's like climbing a hill, climbing a mountain. You know, one step at a time. If you look at the whole thing, I've done this a few times with my brother's a keen hill climber, and I've climbed Munros with him, and I'm not certainly maybe fitter now, but I wasn't back a few years ago, and I just was looking the whole time at the top and never going to do that. You know, I can't go any further. You know, and it's just one step at a time. Pause, take a breath, compose yourself, take some more steps. It's the same thing.
It's exactly the same thing. Exactly the same thing. Yeah, and again, reaching out to people that you think you can ask questions to, finding forums and things like that. But that we
because
can
you need to
talk
know
about that another
what
time.
the steps are.
It was important for me anyway, Dave, to talk about this overwhelm, because I think I was particularly irritated when I saw that there's no such thing as overwhelm. It's in the mind. Well, of course it's in the mind, but it's overwhelm. And you try and learn Swahili in 24 hours and say there's no overwhelm.
Yeah, you can't. I mean, yeah, you're right. It is in the mind, but you can't just dismiss things because they're in your mind. You can't just tell yourself it's not in my mind if you feel overwhelmed. It's just not that simple. You need
I
to
think also
acknowledge it and step
it doesn't.
through.
Sometimes it doesn't make sense. I think that's where the overwhelm is. It appears to be simple, but somehow it doesn't make sense.
There are things for me that just, because of my particular brain, there are things that I just struggle to understand for a very, very long time. And usually it's someone or someone will just explain it in a way that just makes it click.
Exactly.
It's never going to happen for me just by effort of will. 'Cause in some cases, someone has to just explain it to me properly.
Yes, which brings us back neatly to the idea of clarity in the training. Yes, clarity and communication. Do we have anything else more to say, Dave? Overwhelm, it's real, it happens, you have to expect it, but there's a way through it. You will come through it, and by actually acknowledging how you feel. I can't do this today, I'm going to do it tomorrow, maybe the day after.
Yeah, and if you feel you need help, then that can be your next step.
Yes.
Your first baby step, finding some help. Yeah.
Facebook groups or whatever. Anyway.
Yeah.
I think I'm done. I'm ready to wrap this up. Are you done?
Yeah, I don't really have anything else to add. It's just something I think we need to acknowledge. And, as you say, there are solutions and ways to work through it. We don't need to labour it any further, I don't think. So, no, if you have questions, if you've watched this and it's, given you any pause for thought and you have any questions, the email address will appear shortly. Drop us an email. Let us know what your thoughts and questions are on that. And if you've enjoyed this, subscribe, leave comments. We'll reply to those too.
And share.
Have we got a topic for next week?
I think we have to discuss it. We had a number on the table, but we will discuss.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. So it's goodbye from me. See you next week.
And from me. Thanks for watching. Cheers.